Hello learners, I am Dr. Subodh Kesharwani working with Indira Gandhi National Open University in the School of Management Studies. The topic which I am going to talk today is research plan and research problem. I think in our preceding sessions we have talked a lot about research methodology, research methods, research FAQs and research thoughts. In this present unit we are going to talk on the planning and the problem, what exactly the researcher used to face when they initiate a research. Planning is a very important ingredient as far as the sketching of the research is concerned, the recapitulation of the research is concerned, or framing the research is concerned. So when you talk about planning, you have to take into consideration the problems which comes in your mind and how you're going to come out from the problem, how you're going to diagnose the problem. That is the basic ingredient of the planning. So sometimes what we observe that some of the researchers do the planning after diagnosing the problem, and some of the researchers forecast the problem and then reframe the planning on the basis of that. So this particular unit talks about research plan and research problem, and when you talk about research plan and research problem, you are talking about the various aspects which is going to play a very important role, and troubleshooting is something which is very important. When you talk about the troubleshooting, you see that how the troubleshooting is going to diagnose the problem and narrow down the problem which is there. So for that we have to very easily, we have to very strategically work in this direction. So anyway, if we talk more about a plan is typically a diagram or list of steps with details of timing and resources, and used to achieve an objectives to do something. Because as I have conveyed in a very beginning, that planning is a very important ingredient, and if you have planned the research, when you are going to accomplish, when you are going to make it in a final shape, this is going to be a very important thing, and you will very easily go to enjoy the end results of the research which you have initiated in the very beginning. So it is commonly understood as a temporal set of intended actions through which one expects to achieve a goal, because the genesis behind the planning is to achieve a goal. And when somebody is in the process of formulating a research, or somebody is started the doctoral research, in that case there are certain time frames which are there. In that time frames one has to do many things. So it starts with the planning, like the first stage could be literature of review, then the second stage could be formulating the objective, then on the basis of objective you are exploring the gap, and then from there the journey starts, how the respondent reciprocates. And then so in this whole episode of research plan and problem, or the MCOM this particular course, research methodology and statistical analysis, we are going to cover on the certain thoughts, certain the terminologies which is going to play a very important role, and gradually we are going to cover in a very elaborate manner, and then finally we see how it is going to accomplish in building your thesis or the research work or dissertations, or the projects which you have started to do. So that is all about, and plan is typically any diagram what we have talked about through which one expects to achieve a goal, and achieving a goal is a very important thing. And if you are not going to achieve a goal, ultimately what happen, you will be running short of time, and if you are not going to accomplish the task in that prescribed time frame, maybe certain things which become redundant, and what happen again, you have to start your research, and you have to do many things, because the time is changing very fast, and in that particular time frame, whatever the objective which you have chosen, whatever the respondents or the sample you have chosen, it's become redundant. So planning is no doubt going to play at every juncture, at every step, and we will gradually see how the planning is going to affect. We have talk about the research thoughts, research methodology, and certain methods like the case study method, interview method, survey method. Here when we talk about the research process starts with a problem. So, and then formulation of research objective is there, literature review is there, then the daily elimination of research problem is there, then formulation of hypothesis. We will have a separate session, dedicated session on hypothesis, and we will see how the hypothesis becomes true, and when hypothesis become false, what exactly we do. So there are null hypothesis, there are alternate hypothesis. So we are going to touch on all the aspects in a very gradual manner, in a very deep manner. So designing plan for data analytics, collection of data, data processing, then research report, and finally what findings we have extract from the whole carnival of research. So that is where the research process is going to play a very important role. So we start with a problem. This particular session talks about the planning of research and how you are going to plan, and when the problems work as a hindrances in planning, how you cut down yourself, how you shortlist yourself, and how you come out from that. Because coming back, what at every stage, in every juncture, we observe that when you start a research, and research usually takes from 3 to 5 years when you go for dedicated research, for doctoral research, or for the dissertation, which we usually submit in our final year of postgraduate programs. So what we observe that their research is going to play a very important role, and the first genesis, the initial the research comes with a problem. So, and how the problems comes, not like that you can just there are some certain methodologies, there are certain methods which are taken into consideration while finding out the problems. This problem is nothing but a gap. So when any future researchers, or the past researchers accomplish the research, he or she provides certain routes to the future researchers, and these future researchers are taking into consideration that gaps, that problems, and from there they start the certain issues. So what we have observed that we have to quite cautious while formulating a problem. If we are able to find out the real sense of problem, real problem or genuine problem, which is directly going to affect the particular class and creed, or the society by and large, this is going to be affect the research. And when your research is equipped with the genuine problems, and when you are going to make certain parameters, when you are going to make certain when you are going to formulate certain the ways, I think this could be the best way by which the problem is going to be resolved. So the first thing is that you are going to ask questions, do background research. Background research is very important. It's not going to be the background research can only be done when you are going to do the research. It starts with finding the title also. So when you are going to explore the topic, when you are going to work on choosing the topic, because the first step of any research is choosing the topic, and it requires certain time. When you are going, or revolves around certain theme, that this could be your proposed title, I think it's also required a background research. Then hypothesis is very important, because the moment you have gone through the literature, you have find out certain objectives, and that objectives had given you certain gaps. On the basis of gaps, you have come up to the objectives, and these objectives helps you in constructing a hypothesis. And hypothesis is something which is based on test with an experiment and analyze results and draw conclusions. So hypothesis may be true, hypothesis may be false. When we have a full-fledged session, the forthcoming sessions, or the next session is after formulating the objectives, is the hypothesis. In that hypothesis, we are going to talk about all those aspects, because when you are going to emphasize more on the hypothesis, I think from there the true problems comes. And when these true problems are shared with the respondents, and when these respondents reciprocates with their close-ended answers or open-ended answers, and when you are going to incorporate, tabulate it, and compare it and have a comparative view of different respondents, then you conclude yourself to the certain results. So what I mean to say, that in this whole carnival of research process, you will find out that a lot of wear and tear is there, and wear and tear is in the sense that you start with the literature review, and there are certain methodologies which is very important. It's not like that you can randomly do certain things, but you have to be very very systematically move when you are more into the research process. So anyway, we will throw a light on this all these aspects. And when you see this research process, it starts with the identifying the problem, then develop the research plan, conduct research, analyze and report findings, and take action. So that is the reason this particular second unit of this particular course, this research methodology and statistical analysis. The first unit was quite preamble in nature, which was talking on the research thoughts, FAQ, certain terminologies. But the second unit, second chapter, revolves around the research plan and research problem. And when you're going more into depth of research plan, you find out there are certain terminologies which are going to be used, which we usually cover. If we are able to cover in this particular session, it's fine. Otherwise, we can throw a light in the forthcoming session. So, identifying the problem and this problem to solve, project objectives and research questions. So it's not like that the problem you from the day one you start solving the problem. You have to first find out certain questions which are able to give the answers. Sometimes what happens when we are able to find out the good questions or the relevant questions, these relevant questions can itself give us the answers. So choosing the right question and reaching to the conclusion, it also a strategy of the research. So now the second point is develop the research plan. So when you are talking about the development of the research plan, I think there is certain information which is needed. This information is nothing but certain literatures, or literature which are overlap with your research work, and the literature which is already researched by a lot of researchers or the academicians, and you have to move to a right place at right time. So if you have reached to the right literature, I think the first thing which is talking about the relevant information, you can accomplish that goal. Then research analysis and methods. What methodology you are going to use? In our preceding sessions, we have talked a lot about the case study method, interview method, survey method, and then a lot of other methods were there. So these methodologies are going to apply when you are going to analyze your research. Then who are the responsible parties? Like if somebody have started his research on e-commerce or e-commerce, and that too on the vendors of e-commerce, then in that case the vendors who are omnipresent in this present scenario, like the Amazon or Flipkart. If you talk about the generic items, or you talk about the food items, then you have certain apps. So you have to see who are the responsible parties. And when you research e-commerce research is revolves around the consumers, then the consumers who are particularly buying the product through this e-commerce are going to be the responsible parties. So it's not like that you are going to talk about the consumers who are doing a shopping through brick and mortar. So in that case, you have to be quite cautious that your particular parties or the person or the respondents should revolve around the particular theme. Because if you are talking about the technologies, if you are talking about the uses of internet in urban areas, and you are taking the opinion of the respondents who are in the rural areas, I think the purpose is not going to solve. Or you are if you are talking about the usage of internet, and you are just going to the remote areas or to the rural areas where there is no internet. So one has to be quite cautious that the responsible parties are going to play a very important role, and they are by and large directly or indirectly linked with the theme or the title which you have chosen. Then the conduct research is there, secondary data review, then primary data. We have already talked about what is the difference between secondary data and primary data. Primary data collection always talks about the first hand information which need to be gathered or extracted from the end users or the users which are directly associated with that. So suitable methods and techniques are going to play a very important role. There are certain methodologies. Some of the methodologies we have elaborately talked about in our preceding session, and some we are gradually going to talk how we are going to proceed our research. So analyze and report findings is one step in this direction. Then data formatting, how are you going to format the data? Because the preceding session we have talked about that data is quite gigantic in nature right now, and how you're going to convert the data into information, because when you're going to analyze the data, when you're going to revamp the raw data, it is going to take a different shape, and that data is quite useful and informative in nature. So how you're going to do that? Then interpretation of results on the basis of certain information which had been come from the respondents, which have been collected from secondary sources like the existing literature, and then when you're going to accumulate all those things, it take a shape of a reports and recommendations. So it's not like that that only the front office activity, the data which is going to be collect from primary sources is the relevant information. Sometimes you have a combination of secondary data and primary data, because secondary data can build a back it can build certain things, like it can give you the concepts, and when you are acquainted with the concept, then you can apply these concepts for the first hand collection of information. So there is no doubt that the role of the secondary data is also useful, because with the help of secondary data you are going to build certain things, you are going to and then when you have a base, when you have got a roots, then you start framing certain things on the basis of that. So this is one of the way by which the things are going to be done. Then taking action, thought and planning, evaluation of options, and execution. So what we have observed that when you talk about research process, I think these are the 5 ways by which you can initiate the research. And if you see this particular unit, particular chapter which starts with the research problem, research plan is the name of the chapters, and we have formulation of objectives, we have hypothesis, we have research design, and then pilot study and pre-testing. So what we have planned, since this is a half an hour presentation, and we are very much adhered to the subjects only, particular theme. So today discussion revolves around the research problem, and in the forthcoming sessions, in an isolate manner, we are going to talk on formulation of objectives as a full-fledged session. Then hypothesis could be one of the session, because hypothesis, how you're going to frame the hypothesis, how, and then research design, and then pilot study and pre-testing. If you talk about the research problem talks about the sources of research problem, from where and how the sources you are going to get. It's purely the literature which is available, and on the basis of certain literatures, when you go through into the depth of the literature, you find out there are certain gaps which automatically comes. The researchers, the existing researchers have certain constraints, and they are not in a position to accomplish all the gaps in their particular research. So some of the gaps they cover in their particular findings, and some they left for the future researchers. So if somebody had accomplished the research in 2018 on the particular theme, and now 2020 is going on, so it means that when I am going to start my research, and if I am somewhat inclined with the research of that particular existing researchers, I can extract those gaps and I can start my journey from those gaps. So it's not like that whatever the gaps, whatever the objectives he had framed or she had framed, we also going to take that. We have to start our journey from where he or she had stopped. So this could be the modus operandi by which the research problem could be diagnosed and research problem could be taken care. So anyway, what I mean to say that points to be considered while selecting a problem, specification of the problem is very important. How are you going to specify a problem? So we will see that, and prior to going into the depth of this problem, we are just throwing a light on certain plans, because a plan is a personalized map that relates projects to goals, and professional timelines should be revisited, re-evaluated and revised at least annually. So that is there and can be designed with the help of mentor or colleague and can serve multiple purposes. So what we observe that when you talk about the research plan is a routine matter. It's a phenomena which need to be taken in a very systematic manner. If somebody is a doctoral student, and when we talk about the minimum time frame for PhD or for the PG is 2 years, and for doctoral program is 3 years and maximum is 5 years. So one has to recapitulate, within the particular time frame if they are, doing the research. It's not like that what you have done in the first year, you just, carry forward to that. There are certain things which are changing with the change of time, and you have to update yourself, you have to revamp yourself. And when you are revamping yourself, there are certain thoughts which are coming day by day. And when we are talking about, the example like, the e-commerce, if somebody is doing on the consumers related to e-commerce, I think the consumers of e-commerce in 2018 is somewhat different from consumers of 2020. There are certain, add-ons into it. And if you see the age brackets which have been changed now, the elderly people, the people who are 60 years plus, 60 plus, they are now more frequent, they are now more acquainted with e-commerce. And the kids who are 18 years old, those who have just entered into their college life, they have got different mindset to do the things. So that is the reason, the things are there where this e-commerce portals are now imbibe themselves with certain bundle privileges. Like Amazon, take example of Amazon. Amazon is now, providing a Prime Video, so where you can, do the shopping, you can watch the movies, and you can see the web series. So these are the things which can extract the consumers to restrict themselves to the particular portal, and work in a one-stop portal mode and try to accomplish the thing from there itself. So research plan is not a formal research proposal, although it may be the foundation document from which a detailed research proposal may be developed. So how do you write a research plan? That is more important, because as a grassroots researcher, as a the researcher who have just entered into a research world, we have to see that how we are going to write a research plan. And first choose an important subject. That is more important, because if you are not going to restrict yourself to the particular theme, ultimately what will happen, you will not reach to the conclusion, and there's a probability, there's a chances that every time you could be quite confused. Say after a year you say, why not, I can change my topic, I'm not getting relevant literature, I'm not getting the appropriate respondents, or the objective is not up to the mark. So these are the questions which are coming in your mind and may be considered as a research problem. So there are certain, when we talk about research, we talk about there are certain research which are God created, and there are certain research which are man created. Like when we distinguish between the God creation and man creation, I think when God gives you there are certain things which are omnipresent, which are universal truth kind of. So you are not in a position to change that. But on the other hand, there are certain the challenge which can be rectified at your end. So the man created issues, if as a researcher, if you have chosen a wrong title and you are not satisfied with that, I think, and without going into the depth of literature, I think after a year your morale can go deteriorate, and what will happen, you will lands up to the no man's land. So it means that very easily you are in a dilemma, and you can try to change the topic after devoting 1 year, 1.5 years. So the first point, the first emphasis is to have a thorough literature review. I think if you have planned that your research is going to there for 3 years or 4 years, then first 6 months dedicatedly could be on emphasize on how you're going to put your thought on the particular subjects, how you're going to emphasize more on the review of the subject. So for that, a lot of literature need to be randomly done. So in the beginning stage, what we have to see, we have to be in an exploratory mode. And when you talk about the exploratory mode, you have to have a basket of research, a research in your drive, or in your in a print format, and then you start reviewing that particular basket. And basket could be quite bigger, and the first month could emphasize more on collecting the particular information related to that particular theme or title. And the moment you have got 100 or 200 or 300 manuscripts or testimonials, then you narrow down yourself. Now after having 500 600 literatures in your hand, then you start narrow down yourself how you are going to cut short. So the cut short question comes into your mind when you when you have got ample literature in your hand. So the first, you have to choosing the subjects, and then starting taking literatures related to that particular subject, and then you have to be specific. Now you start with generic approach, and then you are now particular in nature, and you are quite specific now, and then you are narrow down yourself. So when you are started narrow down yourself, what will happen that that you have got a roof to, and what there are certain parameters that what could be the way by which you are going to shortlist, because when you are going to find out anything, when you are going to explore anything, it's very easy. You start taking, many things. But when the question comes how you are going to cut short now, it's a big task. So there are certain methodologies, there are certain, approach which need to be followed, that whether this particular theme falls under your domain or falls under your jurisdictions, or, whether it can, fit in the context of India or the pan-India or the particular state in which your research is going to be applied. So these are the parameters which is there. Like if you are located in Delhi, I think then your research could, if you have started anything, and how you're going to, take the sample, who could be, what could be your universal. So what I mean to say, when you're emphasizing on the specifical approach, then in that case you have to follow this modus operandi or the pedagogy. So keep it short and focus on the major themes. That is very true. And be serious about writing. I think writing needs to be started, and what I have talked about, the concept, building of the concept starts with the secondary data, the existing literatures, the literature written by the existing researchers. You have to, start building the concepts, and when you start building the concepts, I think the research work, the thesis or the dissertation, it's not, talks about the first-hand information, but a combination of, the existing literature and the first-hand information. And how you're going to imbibe, that is more important. Have a solid, well-considered, realistic plan. Planning is, you have to start with the planning, and you have to end with the planning. If you are not, if you have planned in the very beginning, and then you have stopped yourself, and then you have started, then you think of that I am going to plan at the end of my thesis. It's not like that. The planning is a routine matter. It's a regular phenomena. So what you have to do, you have to, follow this phenomena in a very in certain intervals. So preliminary data, including redundant approaches, that is more important. And when we have started our research and the time frame is 3 years or 5 years, and in the beginning stage, there are certain things which considered to be a hot cake. But what you observe that after certain time, these hot cakes become obsoletes. So how you have got a skill to learn, then unlearn, and then relearn model. So in the very beginning, you have learned many things, and you have found out that these are the certain things which have been now obsolete or redundant. Then you eliminate that, and when you are going to eliminate certain things, you have got certain modus operandi by which you can bridge that gap by something else. So research plan is a very routine matter. I'm saying that, and it's quite sensitive in nature, and it is something which follow a stereotype approach. And if you are following that, I think you would be in a very, very win-win stage. So the goal of the research plan is to give others a 10,000-foot view of why you are doing the study and how you are going to conduct the study. That is very true, because the research plan is a long-term plan. It's a long-term vision. It's not a short-term vision. But you have bifurcated that long-term vision into certain short-term goals. And if you have planned to accomplish the research in 4 years or 5 years or 3 years, then this whole, the phenomena, the whole structure is going to be bifurcated in such a manner, or in certain layers, that in the first layer what you are going to do, in the second layer what you are going to do, in the third what you are going to do. And I think when we talk about the planning, when we talk about the accomplishment of task, everywhere we observe that this planning is going to play a very important role. So the research plan gives the opportunity to discuss proposed research, stating its importance and how it will be conducted. So it's not like what I have told you, that when we go more into the depth of this planning, we find out that it is helping, in every stage, in every juncture, you find out this research plan is very important, and it can provide you certain, avenues when you go more into the depth, or when you are going to synchronize yourself with that. So essentially the research plan is an abbreviated introduction in methodology, and it's not like that what we have planned. So it could be a methodology, it could be a method, like at which stage we go for interview methods, at which stage we go for case study method, at which stage we go for survey, or framing the questionnaire. So all these the pedagogy is a part of the planning. So address the approach, and this could be qualitative and quantitative. We have already talked about the qualitative methods and quantitative methods, and we see that how this qualitative methods and quantitative methods are used, when you are applying this methodology or the rationale of the study. So research plan also identifies the theoretical framework, the constructs and variables in the study. And when we are talking more about the hypothesis, we see that how this hypothesis, which comes after thoroughly going into the literature and finding out the gap and objectives, and then we have framed the objectives, and there are certain objectives which are considered to be null objectives, and there are certain objectives which are considered to be alternate objectives. So when objective fails, when objective becomes true, we will definitely throw a light, and this can definitely add helpful to the learners, because when they formulate a research, I think hypothesis is a very important ingredient prior to the objectives. So if you have right objectives and if you have framed the right hypothesis, I think you have 25 to 30% you have accomplished your battle. So the research plan should contain starting point and theoretical basis, previous aims of the research we have already talked about, research task and questions, and ethical issues are there. There are certain the ethical issues. That is the reason you find out this plagiarism is a very important issue right now. And if you are not adhere to the plagiarism issues, or the morality of taking the contents and not acknowledging it, or the issues which is going to affect the society by and large. These are the certain factors which they can take into consideration. So research methods and data administration of working plan for part of the task, schedule and funding. I think this is there are certain research which are academic in nature, which is part of our the study. So if somebody is pursuing their PG programs, I think some research is part of their work, and when they are doing the doctoral program, there also certain research is going on. But on the other hand, we observe that when you complete these particular programs and enter into a corporate world, there are certain research which are paid in nature, or it had certain funding plans. There are certain agencies in the world which provide the opportunities to the first grassroots researchers, or the first hand researchers to enter in the world of research and get some funding from the government or government agencies, or through the private parties, and then do the research for them. So some of the companies sometimes do the research. Some big companies are into the research, like Standard and Poor, or other agencies are there which exclusively work for the third party, like KPMG, Ernst and Y, Ernst and Young is there, or there are certain agencies which are doing the research for others, and hire these kind of people. So there is a great opportunity to exploit the results for research, and there is employment opportunities also there. So when you talk about the research process, define problem, preparing the research design, data collection, data analysis, and interpretation and report writing. I think I have talked a lot about this. So now I think the framework of the planning is now in the mind of the research. They are now more acquainted with the planning. That planning is not the information or the effort which need to be done in the beginning or at the end, but it's a routine matter. It's a matter which is part and parcel at every juncture, and you find out that when you move one step ahead, you can plan certain things and then you initiate. So, and how you're going to narrow down the problem, because the moment you move one step, I think one problem comes, and the moment you move second step, the other problems come. So after certain time, what happens, if you are not going to cut short those problems or eliminate those particular problems, you will have a bunch of basket of problems. So when these baskets of problem accumulate, I think it's a biggest concern for the researchers to how to come out from that. And once you are in the trap of the problem, then what will happen, that you are in the intention to just resolve the problem. So we have to have a modus operandi, or the procedures which can provide us a roof that how we can eliminate the problem at that particular juncture, so that when we move to the next step, there we can go it freely, and if there could be any problem, we can eliminate there also. So there could not be accumulation of problems. So a research problem is a statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved, a difficulty to be eliminated, or a troubling question that exists in scholarly literature. What we observe uh, that uh, that how you're going to investigate, how you're going to diagnose this particular thing. So how to write a problem statement, like now when we have find out the problem and there are certain problem which is there, how we are going to come out from that problem, that put the problem in context. This could be, and what do we already know about it, and describe the precise issue that research will address. So and what do we need to know about that. So the relevance of the problem. So what we observe, that there are certain problems which are customized in nature. There are certain problems which not occur with the past researchers, and when you have started the research, so it's more like the tailor-made kind of. So how you're going to, and these problems are not, since they are not generic in nature, they are more specific. So now, since you are a researcher and since you have taken particular factor into consideration, so whatever the problems occur, now you have to resolve. And if you are expecting that the others who have not faced those problems can answer or can provide a solution, I think you will be in a very different position, and maybe the whatever the answers comes, whatever the rectification comes, it's not foolproof, and maybe it had certain discrepancies. So when you're talking about the relevance of problem, you have to see and you try to resolve at your end. So set the objective of the research. So in our forthcoming session, which is purely talking on formulation of objectives, we will see that how objectives comes, from where the objective origins, like when we do the literature review, and when we find out certain gaps from there, and these gaps are something which fit in the bottle of our thought which we have framed, and then what we do from there, we start extracting the objectives. So when you have got uh, 7 to 10 gaps, I think it's really cumbersome for you to go with 7 to 10 gaps. Then all gaps are converted to objectives. So when you are going to start your research, you have to be quite specific into it, that your objective could be in your fingertips, and your gap and the gap which you have chosen is based on that particular objective. So in our forthcoming session, we will definitely talk about these parameters. So what we observe, that there are certain things which we have to remember when writing a statement of the problem for research. So identifying an issue or gap in existing knowledge in the field, this is one thing which is there. Demonstrate the need for further research on the topic. What we observe, that on the need analysis is a very important ingredient. If you are not doing a need analysis and starting a research, because the very good example is the development of course. Let's take an example. Being a teacher in this particular institution, when and everybody knows that the beauty of the IGNOU is the self-learning material, the study material which IGNOU put in the text format. So when we develop the self-learning material, we do a lot of need-based analysis. The intention is very clear. The need, and when we do the need-based analysis, we realize that what exactly the learners expect from us. And today's scenario talks about the pull approach and pull approach, that what exactly the consumers, what exactly the students are expecting from the teachers. And the beauty of the self-learning material, which usually designed by IGNOU, Indira Gandhi National Open University, or by NCERT for school-going kids, that the self-assessment pedagogy, that whatever while going through the particular content, when they go through the content, they can lead to certain activities, and when they accomplish the activity, they reach to the particular conclusion, that by going through the particular activity, and they can assess themselves. So this self-assessment phenomena is something which is the one step in this direction, and this need-based analysis is one of the important ingredient for that. So be realistic from the perspective of gathering data, budget constraints, and time frame. I think time frame is very important, because if you are not going to accomplish the task in the particular time frame, because the way technology is coming up, the way business is changing right now, the way research is, I think tomorrow become the redundant. Lot of researchers are doing the research on the particular topic, And if you have chosen certain literatures and you have started your work, and if you are not going to accomplish the task in the particular time frame, I think there you lack. And then what happens, somebody will come up with their thought, and whatever you have done, it's just a replica of that. So you have to come out from all those things. So be based in the theoretical, factual or conceptual framework. We have talked about that only there's not a utility of primary data, but the secondary data, the concepts, framework, the theoretical factuals, all are very important. Answers to what questions and should have the strong ethical base. I think if you start the thing with a good cause, you get a good reply, you get a good end. And the ethics talks about that, the morality, that how you are going to cut out or from this plagiarism approach, and the content which you have taken is properly endorsed or acknowledged, and proper weightage need to be given to the past researchers, because the effort of the researcher is perpetual in nature. And when you are taking any things without acknowledging, I think somewhere this malpractice is involved, and one has to come out from this. So be written clearly and concisely. If you're a non-academic friend, probably need to revise it, and be free from unnecessary jargons and sweeping statements. There are certain jargons which are not acceptable, and some can affect somebody else. So these are the things which is there. So anyway, I think there are some good research problems which is in the form of questions like, does client-centered therapy produce more satisfaction in clients than traditional therapy? This is an experimental design. And does behavior modification reduce aggression in these are the questions once you start framing. And are the descriptions of the people in social studies discussion biased, and what goes in an elementary school classroom during an average week? And so there are certain questions which are related to the research. If you are doing a research on the particular theme, you have to adhere to that. And like when you talk about survey design, how do parents feel about the school counseling programs? And so what I mean to say that good research problems are in the form of the questions, and there are certain questions which are self-explanatory in nature. And if somebody have a very good questions, and these questions are itself giving the answers, and you can have the questions in a close-ended mode, you have a questions in open-ended mode. And when we are going to formulate certain questionnaires, we can definitely talk about from where you have to start, because if you have a basket of huge questions, I think the respondent will rush away in between or in the beginning stage. So the questions need to be framed in such a manner it can integrate the audience, it can integrate the audience till last. This is something which is very important. And I think we have talked a lot about this particular thing, about this research plan and research problem, which is a very important ingredient, because it talks about the planning. It talks about how you're going to structure yourself, because if you have not structured yourself in a very strategical manner, what will happen? You will be in the no man's land. And when you have realized after wasting 1 year or 2 years that you are in a no man's land, you stand nowhere. So either you are not in a position to go back or go forward. Then what happens? You have one option, that you can shut down your research. So being a researcher and being a good planner, you have to always plan the thing in such a manner that you can lead to a good conclusion and happy ending. I think by that I am winding up my session, and we can have some more good sessions on this particular course, research methodology and statistical analysis. Thank you very much.